Don't be a jerk. Feed your vendors. So we can have a very real conversation about why you need to feed your vendors, and I can exhaust all of the options. But the truth is that as much as it's about hospitality, it's about common sense. Nobody does their best work when they're hungry, tired, and exhausted. And a vendor who's been pulling a 12-hour to 8-hour shift with you at your wedding without a break and without eating is all three of those things. Who do you need to feed? Anybody who is going to be present at your reception while dinner is being served, who cannot leave for a scheduled break, and who is not part of a full service catering team. Here's the thing. Full service catering teams usually have their own way of figuring this stuff out, so you don't normally have to include them in their count. But if you have any kind of bartenders who are working in addition to the catering team that aren't included, you might want to include them in your count. It's a nice gesture. What do we feed those vendors? There are a lot of options. I know that a very popular cost-saving hack is to ask your caterer to provide boxed vendor meals, but in reality, it's so much better to provide a hot meal for those vendors because they're pulling a 6 to 12-hour shift on average, and to stick them with a wrap that's been in a fridge for at least 6 hours, but probably was made the night before by the caterer, is just depressing. So maybe we don't do that. What do we feed them? So as a planner, I require that I eat the same meal as the guests and you, because I am your first line of defense when it comes to food quality. If something comes out oversalted or cold or it's not the right thing, I know exactly what you ordered, and I'm gonna be the one to reach out to the caterer first. As far as feeding the other vendors the same meal that your guests are eating, there are benefits to that too. For your photographer and your videographer, sitting them in the same room as the guests has a benefit because you don't want them to miss anything. The last thing you want is to miss an impromptu moment at your wedding because your photographer was in the back getting a granola bar out of their bag. And it's kind of weird to sit them at a table in the room and have them eat a boxed lunch made by the caterer. A note about the boxed lunches: nobody likes the boxed lunches. They're really terrible. So it's just a lot nicer to provide a good hot meal for your vendors. If you're not serving your guests a full meal and you still need to serve the vendors who are going to be working for an extended period of time, consider asking your caterer if they would allow you to bring in outside food. So my client recently did this. We had to double check and see if the caterer had an exclusivity clause, and then I reached out to them because it's just a rule of thumb that you don't bring outside food into someone else's event. So I asked the caterer and I said, hey, you're not serving a full meal. You're not gonna have a full meal on site. Do you mind if we just bring in pizza for a couple of the people who are gonna be working the event? And they said, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. So we got people taken care of in a much more cost-effective way. My point here is that there's a lot of ways to skin a cat that don't come at the cost of your vendor's comfort. Where do you feed your vendors? So we already talked about having your photographer and your videographer and me in the room with you while you eat. That's the best place in my opinion, honestly. But some of your vendors might have a preference to be out of the room, and that's okay too. I know a lot of DJs who want to eat at their station so that they can keep an eye on things. I just kind of let them dictate their own. So I will plan to have a vendor table in the main space of the reception as long as that's doable with the floor plan. And then if the vendors choose to use it, great. If they don't, no big deal. When do you feed your vendors? Now, people like your videographer, your photographer, your planner, and your DJ should be eating immediately after the head table. And here's why. You don't want pictures of you eating. Nobody wants pictures of them eating. Especially as women, we tend to be overcritical of ourselves. And they're just not good pictures. Like, you're slumped in your seat, you're bent over the table. It's just not a good look. And it's not how you want to remember your wedding day, no matter how good the food was. So if you can manage to feed them immediately after the head table, then they'll be done by the time you're wanting to get up and go around and say hi to all your guests. So in summary, before I go inside and crush my food that I got for dinner, because it's Monday and wedding hangovers are a very real thing for planners, who do you feed? Anybody who's at your reception for an extended period of time, photographer, DJ, videographer, planner, who can't go and take a regularly scheduled break and who isn't a part of a full service catering team. What do I feed them? Preferably the same thing the guests are eating, because hot food is always better and people do their best work when they have full bellies. When do I feed them? Immediately after the head table, preferably when you guys are eating your meal, so that they can be ready and raring to go when you're ready to start the party later. Where do I feed them? Preferably in the same room as the reception, but if that's not possible, find a small space in a back hallway or an adjacent room that they can be comfortable eating their food and get a little bit of a break in the action. Why do you need to feed them? Long story short, because they're human, because of hospitality, but if that doesn't do it for you, because hungry, tired people don't do good work. So give them the fuel they need to produce the product you want. Because if you want good wedding photos, you need people who are performing at their best. So feed your vendors and make sure that you've got what you need. All right, guys, so if you liked this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about why you need to feed your vendors, go drop into the comments and let me know if I can expand on anything for you. And finally, hit that subscribe button to see me pop up more in your feed. Until next time.